Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex. This is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Friday, so it is McFarlane Day. We're looking at the next bit of comics to contain some of his artwork in my collection. So we finished off last episode with the Infinity Inc. stuff. And the next thing he did for DC Comics, he actually was able to finish up Batman Year 2. For some reason, Alan Davis was the artist on the first chapter, and Tom McFarlane was then, I guess, hired to finish off the rest of it. Don't know what happened there exactly. Seems kind of odd. Maybe they were in a pinch. You know, Tom McFarlane at that time is, from what I can tell, a reliable artist, but not any kind of superstar. So they were probably in a pinch, and, you know, he was there and probably pushing and promoting himself, as he usually does, which is great because, you know, McFarlane is great at promoting himself. And what's interesting about this is that, you know, we're going to get more of that McFarlane inked by someone else, trying to kind of give him a house style feel. And then what's interesting in this miniseries is the last chapter. For some reason, I don't know if he pestered them or asked them or how he did it, but he gets to ink himself, and we start to see, you know, the McFarlane that we know and love. We see kind of a giant leap in his evolution. There'll be other ones, but that's kind of the first one I think that's really noticeable, right? So we'll see kind of his ticks along the way, but that last issue is what we're going to focus on mostly for this review. And Alan Davis, great artist. We're going to go through that first chapter fairly quickly. And then, like I said, analyze the stuff inked by someone else. I'll point out who that is when we get there. And then, of course, pay special attention to that last issue inked by McFarlane. One just weird detail, which I don't see a lot of, and as a kid I thought just this was kind of weird and not off-putting, just different, I guess. The fact that Batman, you can see his pupils on this cover, right? It was kind of a rare thing for anyone to draw Batman with pupils. I don't know why it was done here. This is, you know, Alan Davis, probably inked by Paul Neary. Just not sure why that choice was made, and just slightly odd to me. We don't see a lot of that. All right, so let's have a look inside. That's a McFarlane spread, right? Seems pretty obvious. This is the one that Bob Kane swiped. Look that up. So we get an introduction. Not going to go through that. I guess I marked it for no reason. So Alan Davis, no slouch, doing the first chapter here. Like I said, we'll go through it. There's something a little kind of splotchy and loose in the inking, more so than later on between these guys, because I do feel like they become kind of a team, right? Alan Davis and Paul Neary. Just not looking as slick as it'll eventually look. Not that it's bad in any way. Like I said, Alan Davis is definitely no slouch. Strong artist. Strong visual sense. Look at these shots here, right? But also a visual sense that'll clash a little bit maybe with McFarlane's, you know? If you're looking for consistency from this chapter to the next, it might feel a little bit off, right? But I feel like there was probably just some sort of situation there where Alan Davis quit or they had an argument. Again, this is just a hypothesis. But yeah, not quite sure. It is a little disheartening to see that shot of Batman beat up, you know, those nasty cuts from the Grim Reaper's blades here. And that is it for Alan Davis. And right away, we get a shot here of the cover, right? McFarlane drawing that. And already the Batman looks quite different from what we saw here. You know, with Alan Davis is much more of, I guess, of a Neil Adams inspiration. And Todd's going to kind of go, I guess, in his own direction. I don't know exactly where he got. Actually, I do. I feel like it's probably Marshall Rogers, right? He's talked about that that run that Marshall Rogers did on Batman. So I think that's where McFarlane's getting a lot of his inspiration for what he does on this in his version of Batman, at least at this time. When he does them later in Spawn Batman, he looks quite different. It's more of a Dark Knight Returns kind of Batman, but here we get long-eared Batman. So Mike W. Barr is the writer, Tom McFarlane penciler, and Alfredo Alcala is the inker. Great artist on his own, awesome, but has a very traditional, you know, illustrative style. So I don't know if it works really well on McFarlane. In fact, I know that it doesn't really. There's just something that doesn't mesh between their styles, that doesn't work together, right? It's they're almost working in opposition in a weird way. I mean, it's not horrible, but it's just very pedestrian, kind of boring. You know, that might be partly McFarlane's fault for his layouts, I guess. But the finish definitely just does not help it in any way, right? If you're looking through this, You know, it's a slight step up maybe from Infinity Ink. You're getting a little more of the McFarlane cartooniness in some of the faces, right? A little bit, but it's still two styles fighting against each other is what I feel here. You get in the McFarlane layouts, the graphic sense that, you know, works usually, but just the rendition of the face here, nothing to do with McFarlane at all. Just, you know, totally reshaping the art here. That's not a McFarlane face. Like, it's, yeah. These pages, again, with the design and stuff, you get a slight feel for the McFarlane, but the lines are way too thick. You know, the detail just way too old school to work on something that just underlying, the underlying drawing is not that, right? It's not trying to be that. So to throw that on top of it just kind of looks weird. Odd. There's a McFarlane flourish if I ever saw one. Like, I know even these faces, these, you know, ladies' faces have been completely changed. You know, there's nothing to do with McFarlane on any of these pages here. A little bit here in the face, a little bit, but like, just everything's being changed. Oh, I do spot a McFarlane hand down here, that for sure. That was left in. So even in his depiction of Batman here, you know, definitely with the inking and stuff, feels way more subdued than what we're used to from McFarlane. We are starting to get a little bit of the, you know, McFarlane cape, the Spawn cape. Looks really cool here, which, you know, I'll repeat is, you know, he got some of that from Marshall Rogers for sure. Definitely made it his own later on, you know. But I think that's where he got the idea, and just, that's the ideas you extrapolate on it. You make it your own, right? Eventually it becomes yours. So some of these layouts here, the poses and stuff going on here definitely remind me of more of McFarlane. It's almost like in the further away shots, you know, Alcala can't get as far away from the original McFarlane stuff because it's smaller and not too much detail. So it brings a little truer to McFarlane's kind of style as we move along, but still nowhere near what we know McFarlane to do. But I do want to point out a lot of dark shadows added in, right? Like the leg here, the cape, you know, on the clothing here, on the cape again, because that's going to kind of disappear with that last issue that McFarlane inks himself, right? His style will be developing, so when we get there, I'll point out that there's something pretty overt about the way he's doing it, and something that's kind of missing that's included more in these more traditional house style pages. Feeling a bit of the McFarlane here in this profile. Definitely feeling a lot of McFarlane here in this silhouette. This here is very McFarlane. And since it is a silhouette, it's hard for the inker to really, you know, change it to the point of, you know, making it more house style, I guess. In this case, I feel like that's a real quick shot there. Even this, in spite of the inking, is pretty McFarlane, right? He's starting to bust through a little bit. This whole panel too, very McFarlane. Again, when in the case, you know, of having another inker, anytime he's doing more silhouette or just simple line work like this, it's harder to get away from what he's laid down. The skull's getting a little bit interesting, a little more McFarlane-y. This is all Alcala, right? Like, Tom McFarlane probably laid out the faces, but that's Alcala doing his thing and just totally changing the whole face. Even here, that's not McFarlane at all. These are, you know, so he picks and chooses. These are fairly McFarlane-y, just inked by someone else, but the face is close enough, slightly cartoony. And again, using the full effect, the cape, really like this shot here. That's an interesting one, right? Pretty cool. Good angle. They're fighting here, you know, there's a bit of Neil Adams, and then you got the McFarlane cape. Alcala doesn't want to fill all this in, or McFarlane did one of those kind of silhouette things where he leaves it open for color, and Alcala was like, no, we need to put something in there. Instead of just putting it all black, let's do some Alcala texture. That's not, you know, a texture that just Alcala does, but I'll call it that for now. Kind of a Dark Knight inspired shot there, maybe. It's cool. And this is just so weird. This almost looks in a weird way like we're going back to Bob Kane kind of Batman. Just a strange disconnect between these two faces in my mind. It was almost like it was drawn by two different artists. Very odd. So part 3, we still got Alcala as an inker. So I'm going to go a little faster because we want to get to that issue where Todd inks himself, because basically we'll be seeing more of what I've described here. Cool splash again, the one Bob Kane ripped off. Good shot here. McFarlane composition definitely, but Alcala finish. That's more of what we're going to be seeing in this one. I'll just go quickly, and anything I think is overtly McFarlane-ish I'll point out. This one's very cool. I don't know if it's McFarlane-ish, but it's very cool. The gridded teeth here. This kind of silhouette once again. Some of the stuff here, some of the faces, right? It seems like Alcala hasn't messed with them too much. Maybe this one here. This feels more McFarlane here. But nothing to write home about. Alcala still being pretty overbearing on everything. Trying to give it that DC House style once again, that DC House style finish. Definitely some McFarlane, you know, composition shots, I guess, you know, close-ups. Just the finish has nothing to do with what we know McFarlane's going to be. And just seeing the next issue, you'll see what a huge difference it makes. So more Alcala being overbearing. And that's pretty much it for the rest of this issue. So yeah, I'll just go through it quickly because even this, right, just it's still going for that Dick Giordano, Neil Adams thing, and that's not what McFarlane's doing at all. Even just in here, you can see that that's not what he's doing. So here we are finally to chapter 4. So Todd McFarlane, pencils and inks. So let's have a look there, see what's going on, and the difference already just in this shot here should be fairly obvious, right? Now, what we're going to get is, you know, McFarlane line, but not a lot of shadows. Okay, you get a bit here and there, but mostly it's kind of that, you know, clean line. Even though I wouldn't describe McFarlane's line as clean, but at least, you know, no shadows on most of the forms, unless it's just a straight black shadow like the Grim Reaper here. So you'll see that as we go through, but right away, just the finish and the textures and stuff, we're starting to see McFarlane, right? What he's going to look like when he moves on to the Incredible Hulk, where he can ink himself. I think he inks himself on that. And then when he does those first 2 issues of Amazing Spider-Man, inked by Bob McLeod, looks nothing like McFarlane, and all of a sudden on, I think it's right on issue 300 if I'm not mistaken, he inks himself, and it's similar to this. It's a little later, it's probably a little bit better than this, but this is where he really starts to kind of work out that style that eventually, with leaps and bounds, you know, across the next few years will lead to his, you know, final kind of Spawn style, I guess how I'll describe it. But this is one of those leaps here, right? This is what leads to, you know, eventually grittier characters in his Spider-Man series, and then Spawn. So the compositions are still pretty tame, right? Generally. But you can see the beginning of that McFarlane style, right? Where he's, again, there's not a lot of shadows. It's mostly just defined through line, and he'll work on that and eventually, you know, perfect it. It does slowly but surely, I find, even over the course of this issue, get better from page to page, right? It gets a little more refined. This is very McFarlane to me. Like, this could almost be in Spawn. So you're starting to see those textures that he's using, right? The finicky line work that he does. I mean, isn't that shot much cooler? Just when he's inking himself, creating the dramatics and stuff. Same with this shot here. It's still pretty crude though, you know what I mean? It's not top McFarlane. It's like he's figuring stuff out still. It's not perfect. It's very gritty. It's not always well defined, but he's trying for something. And it's definitely already, the artwork, I think, from last issue is much more interesting. So again, sometimes just not using any kind of shadow may look a little odd, right? But eventually he'll perfect it. Uses a bit here. Obviously when you're doing Batman, it's a little easier maybe to use black and shadows. or more obvious to, I guess. But this is a full-on McFarlane drawn and inked Batman issue, which there's not a lot of them out there. So we start to see the origami cape start to develop, right? And these, you know, silhouettes that McFarlane's going to use a lot for Spawn. Probably started using them here. And again, with Batman, it just makes sense to kind of do that, right? Here's a weird one, though, because that one, for some reason, doesn't seem very McFarlane-y to me. It almost is, in a weird way, is slightly Simon Bisley-ish. I do like this Batman face up here. Very McFarlane. Color's got the teeth wrong there. This is very McFarlane. Close-up shot, right? It's not as detailed as it will become, but he's getting there, you know. At least the composition's right. The look is right. It's starting to look like McFarlane. Now, more examples of that origami cape. This is a weird one. Is it statted from the cover, or, you know, they reused this image in a weird way? Did they lightbox it? I don't know what happened there, but that's definitely the cover reused. Not quite sure why. Deadlines, maybe. Some very McFarlane designs of those vertical panels, right? The insert. This is great here. This almost looks like Sinkowitz. I think I'm saying his name right. So who knows where McFarlane's getting some of these inspirations, but I definitely think possibly Sinkowitz had done this kind of thing on Batman up to this point. I'm pretty sure he had in the early 80s, at least a pinup or something. And then, of course, you get the money shot at the end, and it's been pointed out that this background here is statted, photocopied from, I think, Akira, right? But hey, you know, deadlines and such, and even back then, no one thought we'd be going into so much detail into all of these pages and comics, right? We'll give them that. Like, this shot is very cool. Kind of, you know, maybe it's a bit of a practice run for the shot of Amazing Spider-Man on issue 300. Not that it's exactly similar, but it has that same kind of vibe. And obviously, you know, really think it's cool in what he's doing here with the cape, for sure. You know, it's not realistic, but these were comic books, so you know what I mean? It looks cool, and that's kind of what's important. I mean, to a certain degree, right? So there you have it. Tom McFarlane Batman. Hope you enjoyed the review. Hope you enjoyed the artwork. Like and subscribe if you did, and hope everyone out there has a great day.
Like! Subscribe! Like! Subscribe!
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13. 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KINGCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.